Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty interesting show for you here today. More NBA talk, and of course, LeBron James is back in it with some very, very interesting comments. But before we get to that, and you're here on YouTube, you know what time it is. Go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, that notification bell. Make sure you're kept aware whenever we drop new content on the channel. If you want the audio-only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in The Format Podcast, and we should come right up. If you're enjoying the content, please make sure you give us that like, give us that 5-star review, and drop us a comment. We love those. We try to get back to all of them. Also, keep in mind that every Saturday night at 7 p.m. we're doing live shows, and if the live shows go well and we get a lot of traffic in those, we'll make sure that you guys can call in and interact with me directly on the show. So make sure you tune in for that. Appreciate everything y'all do. Appreciate you being here, and let's get right to it. Okay. LeBron James, Michael Jordan, never-ending GOAT debate. It's always going to go on. But this one isn't about a GOAT debate, but it is about some interesting comments LeBron James made in regards to other comments people made about Michael Jordan. Now, let me start with this. LeBron James is, without doubt, I'm not going to say the greatest scorer we've ever seen in NBA history. I'm not even going to say the most prolific. That's probably Wilt. That's maybe Michael Jordan. However, he clearly is... I don't know how to word that, but he has the most points in NBA history. He's the first player to ever score over 40,000 points, man. Kudos for that. Yeah, for real. 40,000 points is just an incredible achievement, an incredible marker, probably something none of us thought we would ever see in our lifetimes. So kudos, in all seriousness. Kudos to the ability to do that over all these years. Kudos to the ability to keep yourself in condition and put that work in to be able to do that over all these years. It's a lot of miles on those legs, and he is still playing at an incredibly high level. So, but I think most people regard the greatest scorer of all time as Michael Jordan. And I'm sure some of those would argue it's LeBron based on what I just said. And okay, fine. But I think most people would argue that it's Michael Jordan. And there's a reason for that. I could probably, take a whole episode just to run down Michael Jordan's scoring accolades. And it's interesting. The same people who would argue LeBron is a greater scorer than Michael Jordan are the same people that are going to tell you all Michael Jordan did was score. So I'm not exactly sure how that lines up, but whatever. A lot of LeBron fans, there's not a lot of reason and ration in the way they do things or the way they put their thoughts and their premises together, but so be it. Anyway, when it comes to Michael Jordan, we can argue he is the greatest scorer of all time. We look at 10 scoring titles. He was number 3 all time on the scoring list when he retired after only 15 seasons. We look at, he's got the highest single game playoff scoring record, 63. He's got a higher single game scoring record than LeBron James, 69. He's got the highest career scoring average, 30. He's got the highest career scoring playoff average, 31. He's got the highest career NBA Finals average, 41. Like, we can go down the line, number after number after number. Most 50-point playoff games, most 40-point playoff games. I mean, the guy was absolutely ridiculous. So we know what type of scorer this guy was. We know what he represents as a scorer. We're not talking in this particular episode about as a basketball player. We're talking simply as a scorer. And why am I bringing that up? If you go on YouTube, there's a number, not right now, of course, watch this, but there's a number of videos that talk about Michael Jordan and the opinion of former players, guys who played against him or played with him or what have you, and what he would be able to do scoring wise in today's NBA based on the rules and the way the game is played. And Meta Sanford Artest, formerly Ron Artest, formerly Meta World Peace. I'm not sure which name he's going by today, and so I don't want to be disrespectful. I do believe it's Meta Sanford Artest, but the point is, he's one of the guys that says he believes Michael Jordan, if he wanted to, could average 50 in today's NBA. And I think Shaq said Michael Jordan could average 45 in today's NBA. And I think a lot of that comes from, again, these are guys who played against Michael Jordan. They recognize his incredible skill set in regards to scoring, being a complete 3-level scorer. And I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, he couldn't shoot the 3. No, he could shoot the 3. We've seen instances where he shot the 3 very well. I'm not talking about one game. I'm talking about in the playoffs. I'm talking about for an entire season, etc. He could shoot the 3, but again, that wasn't the game back then. So guys not shooting the 3 as much in general, on the whole, the percentages are not going to be as high. Now, we know that. I think the modern NBA game, the NBA averages 36% from three. They shoot it so much more. It's just such a point of emphasis. So that has something to do with it. But anyway, a lot of guys believe that Michael Jordan would be an even more dominant scorer today than he was back then. And as I said, Meta Sanford Artest, formerly Ron Artest, formerly Meta World Peace, he believes that Michael Jordan would score 50 if he played today, if he wanted to. And so LeBron James had interesting commentary regarding that. And what he said was, I'm going to read the quote for you. Quote, "There's nobody that's going to average 50 in our league. That's just disrespectful, no matter how great you were in your era and how great you are to play in any era. If that's the case, I believe guys will average 50 in their era, the era that they played in. So I don't believe that." But when Channing said what he said, if you've ever seen the meme of Homer Simpson when he slides back into the bush, that was me, unquote. And that's LeBron James on how he believes Michael Jordan would do in today's NBA and if he could average 50. And so, one, I totally understand LeBron's position on this. One, his whole thing is that, he's the greatest of all time now. Obviously, he is the all-time scoring champion. He's the only guy, as I mentioned, ever to score 40,000 points. And again, incredible achievement. I want to make sure that every time I mention the 40,000, I go ahead and say it's an incredible achievement. One, because it is, and two, because, I'm an old head hater if I don't bow down and worship at LeBron's feet. So let me make sure I say that. I'm not being facetious when I say it, because it's never been done. So anytime you do something in an industry that's been around for 75 years, that's never been done before, it's an incredible achievement. Now, moving on. So he believes that Michael Jordan wouldn't be able to do that. And it's my contention that Michael Jordan could do that. And it's not because I'm a Jordan sycophant. Jordan is not my favorite player of all time. He's not even in my top 3 players of all time. So there's that. I believe what most people believe, that he is the greatest of all time and that he is the greatest scorer of all time. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of reasons to believe that he's the greatest scorer of all time. But why do I believe specifically that Michael Jordan would be able to average 50 points a game if he played today? Well, today is one of the most offensively explosive eras of all time. And so much of that has to do with the 3-ball. And so, it's also one of the fastest pace eras of all time. So when you add these things together, I think the proliferation of the 3-point shot in conjunction with the fast pace, and then of course the defensive rules, basically there are none, Michael Jordan would be able to average 50. And I say that because in 1986-87, this is Michael Jordan's 3rd year in the league. This is crazy. He averaged 37 points per game. And why is that crazy? To me, one, I talk about it all the time. The elite rim protection in the game back then, the fact that the floor wasn't nearly as spread back then, the fact that they weren't shooting all those threes back then, the fact that the paint was often packed back then. You had a power forward from each team. That's 4 guys generally in and around the paint. And of course you had both centers. That's 2 more guys generally in and around the paint. And so you have all of those things in place. And of course, the physicality, the hand checking, actually being able to be bumped or hit physically when you get into the paint and when you get in and around the rim. So all of those things, I think, play a major role and just speak to how absolutely mercurial Michael Jordan was as a scorer back then to average, 37 points per game in that era. I think that's crazy. Now, Michael Jordan averaged 11.9 free throw attempts per game back then. So he absolutely was taking advantage, of getting to the line. So I respect that. But let's look at this before I move on in comparison to the closest scoring season we've seen since then. And that was James Harden averaging 36 points per game. And that was an incredible season. And we actually had people saying back then that James Harden is the greatest perimeter scorer we've ever seen. I'm not even going to get into that because it's absolutely not a debate. But as great as that season was, and it absolutely was a great season, where I want to go with that is the biggest difference between Michael Jordan, his 37 point per game season, and James Harden averaging 36 points per game. And again, incredible season by James Harden. But what I'm going to say about that, here is the biggest difference. James Harden shot more than 13 3-point attempts per game that season. Let's think about that. More than 13 3-point attempts per game that season. Okay, so he averaged 4.8, roughly 5 made threes per season. That's 15 points per game right there from the 3-point line. Okay, and that's 36 points per game. Now, Michael Jordan in his 37 points per game season, and this is why that season is so crazy to me. Do we know how many three-pointers Michael Jordan shot per game that season? Less than one. He shot less than 1 3-point attempt per game that season. It was a totally different game. Michael Jordan in that season, okay? Now, this is mind-blowing, so get ready. 37 points per game, 12 made three-pointers. The entire season. He made 12 threes that season and averaged 37. Now, if that doesn't speak to being the greatest scorer ever, I mean, I don't know what does. And so the reason I bring all that up, if you move Michael Jordan forward in an era that goes faster, in an era that has minimal rim protection, in an era where you can't hand check and the physicality's pretty much been legislated out of the game, in an era where the paint's wide open generally if you beat your first guy, again, in an era where you can shoot so many more threes, I'm not sure Michael Jordan can't manufacture those other 13 points. I'm just not sure. Now, maybe he's got to play some more minutes to do it. That's very possible. Let's see, how many minutes did he play per game in that season where he averaged 37 minutes per game, third season in the league. So he played 40 minutes per game. And so if Michael Jordan, now that was his third season in the league, so them legs were young and fresh. So if, let's say Michael Jordan plays 44 minutes per game, he can't manufacture the rest of those points. And the reason I say that, Michael Jordan really had it down to a science in terms of how to score. Carmelo Anthony once said that Michael Jordan told him the secret of averaging 30. And he's like, well, basically, if you can get about 8 per quarter, like you can average 30 if you get about 8 per quarter, and then you'll have some other big games where you really go off. But 8 per quarter is what? A couple of layups and a couple of mid-range jumpers, right? You don't really necessarily need the 3. Now, if you get the 3, you get there faster, but 8 per quarter, that's 32 per game, right? 8 times 4 is 32. So if you do that, you can average 30 pretty easily. And so most of us, I mean, obviously, that's a lot harder. That's easier said than done to average 30. But if you really break it down that way, it really makes a lot of sense. You grab a rebound and get a putback, or you put it on the floor and you get to the rim and you get a layup, or maybe you get fouled and get a couple free throws somewhere, or you make a mid-range jumper somewhere. So 8 points per quarter, that works. So Michael Jordan had the breakdown right on how to average those points. And so do we think that he couldn't? Well, we know that he would have made more threes in the modern era. Why? Because this is a 3-point era. So, he's going to shoot more just because of what it is. We also know that his ability to get to the rim there's very few players in league history that have the ability to get to the rim the way Michael Jordan had the ability to get to the rim. And we know that, excuse me, that's just what it is. And now when you take out, there's no Elijah Wans, there's no David Robinsons, there's no Patrick Ewing, so on and so forth. Now, don't get me wrong, you have Wemby, who's a great shot blocker, but he's not necessarily he probably would have got posterized too, right? Mount Mutombo made the mistake of saying that Jordan never got him, and Jordan made it a point to get him. But the point is, there aren't the elite shot blockers and rim defenders, in the league the same way there were back then. Like the big men, they're just not the same. It's a different league in terms of where they're positioned on the floor defensively, etc. And so I say all this to say, I don't at all think it's out of the realm of possibility for Michael Jordan to average 50 in this era. Now, LeBron James, he has a right to defend his era. He plays in it. He also never played against Michael Jordan in his prime or otherwise. So he doesn't know how otherworldly great Michael Jordan was when it came to scoring the basketball. Yes, LeBron James is widely held as a basketball savant. I'm sure he's watched plenty of tape. He knows what it is. He played against Kobe, the closest thing to Michael Jordan, but he never actually played against MJ. So he doesn't know what that is. He's watched MJ, but he never really watched MJ, right? He watched the video, but there's kind of something different to watching it live or watching it as it's happening. But the point I'm trying to make is, and he never had to defend him. So he really doesn't know what a demon Michael Jordan was offensively. So the guys that are saying this generally have played against Mike, and some have played against LeBron as well. So I think it's pretty interesting that LeBron was going to say that. Again, I'm not mad at him for saying that. This is his era. He has to defend it. He's basically not, going to sit back and allow somebody to say some usurper, as great as Michael Jordan is, being the greatest of all time, is going to come in and just do whatever they want. But it's my feeling, and the feeling of many, that Michael Jordan could average 50 in today's NBA based on, again, the rules, based on the personnel, based on the way the game is played, et cetera, et cetera. So what I want to know from you is, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think Michael Jordan could average 50 today? How do you feel about LeBron James saying that he couldn't? Do you think LeBron is being a quote unquote hater? Do you think he's jealous? Or do you think he's just defending his era as he should, and defending his era also as being the guy who scored the most points of anyone in NBA history, and again, the first to 40,000, which may not ever be broken? So leave your thoughts in the comment section. Can't wait to hear from you on that. Can't wait to get back to you. And as well, make sure you tune in 7 o'clock tonight for the next live show with Colin. All right. So can't wait to hear you. Can't wait to talk to you there. And I'm out. Peace.